Good evening and welcome one and all. I'm David O'Leary. I'm the host of tonight's events, Greening the Holidays. This event is hosted by Metro West Climate Solutions, an organization whose mission is to inspire sustainable, resilient, and equitable communities, and also to host timely and relevant programs that encourage us all to get involved in bringing about solutions. MCS is a partnership of organizations and congregations, including First Parish in Wayland, where I'm a member, First Parish Church in Weston, First Parish in Lincoln, the Congregational Church of Weston, Sustainable Weston Action Group, SWAG, and a growing list of communities and individuals. You can find out more about Metro West Climate Solutions at metrowestclimatesolutions.org. And by the way, a recording of tonight's presentation will be posted there tomorrow. It is really, really great to see so many people on with us tonight. We're really, really delighted to have a couple of speakers with us this evening who are experts in the fields of reuse and recycling. They have got a lot of creative ideas about greening the holidays. And after our discussion, we'll be taking questions and comments via the, not the chat, which you may be used to, but actually the Q&A function, which is along the bottom of your Zoom screen there. So as we move through the presentation, if you have a question that you'd like to ask, please put it in the Q&A and we'll moderate that and we'll ask those after our presentation. Lauren Fernandez is the Zero Waste Policy Analyst with the Conservation Law Foundation Zero Waste Project. She works on creating healthier, equitable communities through zero waste systems and policies. She's earned an MBA in global sustainability from the University of South Florida, where she researched how race, class, and disabilities impact participation, privilege, and accessibility in the zero waste movement. She loves coffee, right there, compost, kayaking, and spending time with her family and friends. Also joining us tonight, Janice Paré is an environmental analyst with the Mass Department of Environmental Protection. She's earned a master's in public health and environmental health at Boston University, and she has got a long and deep history in the area, an area of expertise in our subject matter for tonight. So I guess I will turn it over to our two guests. Janice, I think you want to open it up and talk to us about greening the holidays. The more I thought about this, I thought about like decorating and shopping and how we eat. All of these are ways. There's probably more too that we could at least be attentive to it and help make the holidays a little bit greener.
Absolutely. Thank you, David, for the introduction. Tonight, Lauren and I are planning to share our favorite ways to green the holidays. During this season, which is Thanksgiving to New Year's time, the average American throws out 25% more trash than they do throughout the rest of the year. When we consider holiday meals, gift wrapping, and packaging from online orders, it's easy to see how quickly all of our waste adds up. And we hope that some of the low waste ideas we share with you today will help you and your loved ones reduce waste this holiday season.
And those are great and important points, Janice. 25% higher is a lot, considering how much waste we produce during the average time of the year. And to think about how much more even adds up during the holiday season is a little bit frightening. But one area that I see tons of waste every year is with wrapping paper and packaging for gifts. So why don't we start there? What are some ways that you reduce your waste while wrapping gifts, Janice?
So in our house, we're really big on reusable gift bags. I've got a collection going back many years, the paper kind. A couple things we've been doing recently are repurposing Mylar balloons. I have a little girl, so we often buy Mylar balloons for her birthday, and we will use those as wrapping paper after the time goes. And then we also use craft paper that we get from online orders, often that comes in boxes as packaging. And so I'll have my daughter draw a picture on it to make it unique. And we've given that to lots of people and they seem to love it. Craft paper is 100% recyclable as long as you stick to things like markers and crayons to decorate it.
Those are such helpful ideas, Janice, because as you know, I also have a small child and we love Mylar balloons as well. They're so fun for birthdays. So that's a really good way to reuse because I always feel a little bit guilty buying them. And then I'm just like, I can't throw this away. This thing is so beautiful and it was a lot of money. So I'm going to definitely reuse that in those ways. But as far as with packaging and gift wrapping, I've done similar things. My mother actually years ago started reusing cloth holiday themed bags. So I'll just show you one here that I have. And then, you know, she would just take them back after we all opened our gifts. She would just take them back and like reuse them every year. And she's passed down a bunch to me. So this is what I use. I actually store my my Christmas decorations in them because my family celebrates Christmas. So we just store them in there during the year. And then I take them out and then I have them to use for gifts again. These kind of bags, you can find them at places like Marshall's, Home Goods, Costco. Just keep an eye out. You'd be surprised where you'd find them. You can also find reusable boxes too that are also holiday themed. As you see this one, and it's great for storage during the year. And again, once you're ready to put a gift in it, you can just, I think especially if you have children or grandchildren, that's a great way to just keep reusing, you know, rather than using one single use gift wrapping paper or bags one time. And you can also just purchase a nice reusable bag. It doesn't even have to be holiday themed. It could just be part of the gift and then the person can reuse it for years to come. And I also personally like skipping tape if possible. I love reusing twine or old ribbons. I think it gives a really kind of nice, unique look to gifts. So that's another idea I have for reducing waste with when it comes to gift wrapping.
I love those bags, Lauren. Those are so cute. Okay, so how about actual gifts? Let's talk about ways we can reduce the amount of stuff that we get that may end up in an incinerator or a landfill. So one thing I personally enjoy is the gift of an experience over a material gift. I prefer stuff like museum passes, audiobooks, movie tickets, gift cards to local businesses and restaurants. I really like that stuff, but I'll take a minute here to acknowledge that giving these kinds of gifts isn't for everyone. Some people in my family would look at me weird if I suggested an experience over a material gift because they don't have a lot of money to spend. So I want to be mindful that these are just suggestions. You can take and pick and choose, you know, just some of these suggestions to reduce your waste. It doesn't have to be, you know, you don't have to be 100%. So when I was a little kid, I didn't have a lot of money. So I used to give the gift of service. So the gift of service is things like shoveling snow, raking leaves, babysitting. The gift of service doesn't cost anything, but it is greatly appreciated.
I'm with you 100% on this, Janice. I love giving experiences to others. I think that's so valuable. And I think oftentimes people often appreciate those more than we realize. When it comes to gifts, a couple other ways that I reduce my waste is I directly ask people what would they like, or what would their children like, or what do they need. So I know there's been a lot of times I've received well-intentioned gifts from others for myself or my child, and then I end up having to donate it because it was something we already owned or we didn't really have use for it or it didn't fit well. And so I think just asking, you know, really helps you know, reduce the possibility of like, this thing is just going to end up, you know, not being used, sitting in my closet for years, and then end up as a donation somewhere. And I think that I personally like to not rely on just like, oh, I'll just donate this, because there are charities like Goodwill who often ends up with many more donations that they actually need or can be useful to them, and they end up having to just throw those away as well. In Massachusetts alone, we have to think about that 60% of our trash is incinerated or burned first, and then landfilled, and a lot of that stuff can't end up recycled. So I would just think about first, just being thoughtful in our gift giving and making sure this is something this person really wants or needs. But if you do end up this holiday season with a well-meaning gift that you know you won't use, another solution is putting it on a buy nothing group or free cycle group. Some of you may be familiar with these type of groups that have popped up around communities around the country. You can usually find them through Facebook. There's also platforms like OfferUp where you can resell gifts. I personally have had great experience with OfferUp buying things used or reselling things. And I think it's been a great way to just reduce my waste. And then some of us, we have brand new items in our homes that we never used. Could you re-gift something to someone who would treasure it more? You know, or could, you know, another idea is just gifting secondhand gifts. Like I've always told people, I'm absolutely fine if you find a secondhand book or kids' clothes or anything that's in really good condition still. I'm always open to that. So I think just, you know, normalizing that this is another way that, you know, we can go to thrift stores or, you know, other boutiques and find things that are in really great condition. That's another way just to buy things that were already made, rather than buying something brand new. And one other idea I'd like to share related to shopping for gifts is, if possible, shop local and then take your own reusable bags. You know, and again, just wanting to acknowledge shopping locally oftentimes comes with spending more money and is not always accessible to everybody. But if that is something that's accessible to you, it really makes a huge difference in cutting down your carbon footprint. It really makes a difference to small business owners when they have business. Rather because most people default to large companies like Amazon. So, you know, you definitely will cut down on your waste shopping locally rather than, you know, ordering things online and then having a lot of that packaging waste accumulate as well.
Yeah, there are so many ways to reduce our waste. And by the way, I regift all the time. I'm guilty, but I love to do it because otherwise what am I going to do with this item that's sitting in my house? I also like to give people whatever they would buy if they were going to splurge. So things like coffee or chocolate, jams, cheeses, something that may be more expensive than they would normally buy or more exotic just to make it fancy. So maybe they would buy it anyway, but it gives it a little oomph. And I've thought about getting a basket at a local thrift store and filling it with grocery store favorites as opposed to one of those pre-packaged gift bags. I've never done that, but I did see a really awesome basket at Savers yesterday. So they're out there. And my mom, as just another suggestion, my mom used to make jam every year using the fruit from our grapevine and tangerine tree. I grew up in Los Angeles. We had those things. But she would give the jars out as gifts all year long. We had tons of it. And she would use fabric scraps because she was a seamstress to make cute little tops for the lids. And everybody loved Teddy's jam.
Oh, that sounds amazing, Janice. Like the same, I grew up in Florida. I lived in Florida for most of my life, and everybody has fruit trees in their backyard. So I definitely miss that. It is nice to just walk out and, you know, grab tangerines or oranges. And speaking of foods, Janice, I'd love to talk more about how we can reduce our food waste during the holiday season. This tends to be a bigger topic during Thanksgiving. I know, like I saw just so many blogs around zero waste in Thanksgiving and, you know, how to reduce your waste then. But we also are going to have a lot of big meals. A lot of people will have large gatherings in the next couple of weeks for either, you know, different holidays, New Year's Eve, you know, parties. So as many of us prepare to host people in our homes or to go be part of gatherings in other people's homes with our loved ones, let's be mindful that these meals can unfortunately can produce a lot of waste. So one tool that we'd love to share is just thinking realistically about meal planning and planning for like what your guests can realistically eat or would take home as leftovers. There's a really great tool that Janice actually introduced me to. It's called the Guestimator, and it's on savethefood.com. We'll drop that link into the chat, but it will help you figure out how much food you need to prepare and serve to your guests. You know, and to be mindful, you know, if you're going to have small children, you know, to think about what they realistically will eat. You know, if you have children or grandchildren, you know, they'll take 2 bites of something and then leave the rest on a plate. So just being mindful of, you know, how much you actually need to buy and serve and prepare. You know, and if we're going to someone else's home, we can also offer to help them with meal planning or be mindful of the dish we're bringing as a means to help reduce waste.
I agree. Food waste is a huge problem all times of the year, but especially during these large gatherings. And the Guestimator tool is very handy. Of course, if there is too much, we can always freeze leftovers for later consumption or compost scraps that don't get eaten. Composting is a convenient, beneficial, and inexpensive way to handle your organic waste, keep it out of the trash, and help the environment. In fact, there are a growing number of food waste collection companies and municipal sites across Massachusetts that are taking food scraps for composting, so you can look into that. You can also just compost in your backyard though. And if you're interested, I recommend checking out Mass DEP's home composting and green landscaping website. And that link will also be put in the chat for everyone to look at. But beyond the food itself, we should take a minute to consider what we're eating on, what we're drinking from, and what we're using to contain our leftovers. So I've got 3 suggestions. 1, if you're hosting, use reusable plates, silverware, and cups. That's easy. Number 2, if you aren't hosting, offer to help your host with dishes if they're on the fence about using reusable things and they want to opt for single use just for convenience. And then number 3, encourage guests to bring containers from home to take leftovers, or bring some that you're okay with giving away so that food doesn't have to be taken home in aluminum foil or paper plates. There's so many ways you can reduce. You just have to sort of think about what you would do at home and then sort of do that elsewhere. And as an introvert, I like washing dishes after the meal because then I get to get away from people. So for me, that's like number 1. I'll do that.
That's great. That's a really good way. That's actually like a really good form of self-care during the holidays. You know, like I've seen all these blogs about like, you know, my husband is very introverted. So I always think about like, you know, how's, you know, when you have to go see multiple family members, especially after not being able to see people so much the past couple of years, you know, how do you survive? So I think that's a great tip, Janice, like even beyond waste. It's a good way to like do 2 things at once. So but I can see how much of our holiday waste would reduce just from using reusables at dinner. But how about the decor we see? Like, I think about like all these, like in the past, like all these wonderful like holiday dinners I've been, you know, at family and friends' house in the past. And we think about the decor that ends up at the table or around the room that we're in. What are some of those ways that we can reduce that kind of waste? I want to talk about that a little bit more. So personally, one idea I've liked is I reuse my decor every year. You know, I've had ornaments, things that have been passed down to me. I'm sure that that's true for lots of people, you know, and I have other types of decor I've just used for years. But one thing that helps me is I just try to stay content with what I have. You know, it's always exciting to go to a place like Target and just see all these like really beautiful holiday decor, but I just remind myself like, what can I realistically fit in my house? How can I avoid buying too much? And do I really need, you know, one more wreath in my home?
You always need another.
Right. Can we have maybe, yeah, we have to think about, can I have too many wreaths, or maybe just I haven't just enough? Personally, I also really do like real trees because I enjoy how they smell. I love the experience of going to pick out a tree with my family, and I dispose of them mindfully when I'm done using them. One thing I've learned is that cities and towns typically will provide tree disposal for you. So what you can do is go to your city or town website. They'll probably have information about it on there. But I'd love to hear from you, Janice, more like what are some ways that you've been mindful about reducing your waste when it comes to holiday decor?
I have a really small house, so for me, it's kind of easy not to buy stuff, but we always use the same decorations year after year. My rule is I can only buy it if I absolutely love the decoration and I know it will bring me joy year after year. So we don't buy disposable decor. This year we bought an advent calendar, which I don't normally do, but it was cool because when you put it all together, it becomes a handmade Christmas village, which is a piece of decoration that we don't have. My 6-year-old is putting the pieces together, which is great for her developmentally. And at the end of the month, we will disassemble the village and pack it away. She can put it together every year because it's easily taken apart. It's really cool. And we have a very real looking fake Christmas tree. I've never had a real Christmas tree, and the idea of getting one is very overwhelming to me. So we use our fake tree. I read recently that buying a real tree is greener than buying an artificial tree if you get one from a local farm that doesn't use pesticides. And I also read that a fake tree must be reused somewhere between 8 and 20 years to make it greener than a real tree that is burned. But luckily, as Lauren mentioned, many municipalities in Massachusetts do have special collections for Christmas trees. And when they collect them, they're mulched, not burned, mulched. A lot of articles I read are saying that the best option to be environmentally friendly would be to buy a potted tree, which can be either replanted or you can just use it year after year. So I like that idea. And I also suggest upgrading your old Christmas lights to LED lights. if you can. So LED lights use a lot less energy than the older string lights that we all grew up with. You can get rid of your old lights by taking them to special string light collection events, or maybe your town has year-round e-waste or scrap metal collection. And some big box stores like Best Buy and Lowe's and maybe Home Depot will take them back as well. So you just check locally for outlets, and I think you can find a way to get rid of those old lights.
No, those are great tips. And I love how you expanded on all these different tree options. Janice, that actually reminded me of something I did a few years ago to reduce waste is when my son was his first Christmas, he was only about 10 months old. So I was really nervous, you know, because he was like, you know, at that point already, he was an early walker. He was standing up, you know, and trying to move around and like on the furniture and everywhere, and he's crawling everywhere. So I was like, I don't want to have this big tree and it accidentally like fall on him. You know, I was a new mom, so I was worried about everything. So what we did is we made this really small book tree. I had seen this like years ago. When I was a lot younger, I saw at another friend's house. She had made like a really small, like looked like a Christmas tree, but she just took a stack of books and like laid out a foundation, and then like the stack of books got smaller as it went up, like the shape of a tree. And then she decorated with lights and ribbons. So we did the same thing. It was a little bit more challenging than we thought, but my husband's a math teacher, so he was really good at like figuring out kind of like, you know, the foundation of it, and it was really cool. And I was like, it was a zero waste Christmas tree. We had the books already, and then just put some lights around it and a couple of decorations, and it was really nice. And then I didn't have to worry about it falling over on a baby. So that's a really fun idea. And if you Google this, I'm sure you can find examples of it, because I'm pretty sure I had to Google some instructions as well.
I mean, it makes you feel better about keeping all those books from your master's degree, right? Because now you have something to use them for.
Right. The one article you had to read for that book. And then you're like, well, I might as well make a zero waste Christmas tree out of this book on water policy.
Yeah, right. My toxicology book would be a real good foundation.
Right.
I agree with you. I think that's awesome. So we hope that everyone was able to take away a new idea for creating a more sustainable holiday season this year, but not only this year, but for years to come. And I just wanted to thank everyone for letting us share our ideas this evening.
Yes,
nice
thank
job.
You so much.
Really, really great stuff. I have a couple of questions of my own, but a couple of questions from the chat, if it's okay, that I'd like to share. Joel noted a couple things back to gifting. Sometimes giving a gift of service. I have given a cookbook, Joel says, with an IOU to bake, cook 10 dishes for the recipient's choice in the book. Gifting secondhand or used items is another way. You talked a little bit about regifting, but things that are in good shape. Does require a cultural change, Joel notes, to make it acceptable. How to change the perception that you're just being cheap and passing along something that you no longer need. And finally, from an anonymous attendee on gifting, if you offer a gift of personal assistance, that is cleaning a parent's house, it is good to put a time limit on it. Say, let's use this before next Christmas, so there's some sort of closure, and not 6 years from now you come back to me and say, remember you were going to help me clean up my parents' house. But back to the social and the cultural bit about sort of explaining why you're doing what you're doing. I was thinking a little bit, I think, Janice, what you said, you know, you're not going to, because you don't want people to, or people may look at you like you're a little weird. Your family may look at you like you're a little bit weird. I wonder if talking about this is what I'm doing and this is why I'm doing it wouldn't sort of help spread the word a little bit, where people may go, geez, I never thought of it that way. I guess that makes a lot of sense, to use recyclable or reusable packaging in the gifts that you're giving. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Go ahead, Laura.
Sure. Yeah, I can jump in. So my first thought is yes, I agree. I think that's a really valid point, is that I think there is still a stigma around secondhand gifts, around even thrift stores. Although I think that that's become more of a trendy thing, especially with like younger generations. You know, but I think though, for me, it's been a little bit easier, like, you know, offering to regift things or reuse things, or telling people like people knowing that I like regift or secondhand things, because they know I've been interested in zero waste for so long. I went back and got a whole graduate degree in sustainability. You know, so people kind of understand like that's something really important to me and to my family. So I think it's just normalizing that and letting people know like, hey, this is an important thing. But one thing that might help is that I think more and more people are becoming concerned about the environment with like climate change being in the news more often, with even plastic pollution being in the news more often. A lot of people are starting to become more aware of these things and more about their impact on the environment. So I think you can always spin it off in that way, you know, is that like, I really care. I want to give you the gift of a good environment. You know, I want to give this gift to your children.
Right.
You know, the best, I saw another zero waste influencer I follow. You know, she always tells people the best gift people can give my kids is a healthy planet in 50 years. You know, so she's like, that's what I tell them when they ask about buying them things. So I think that that's really like, I think that can be a good way to segue into like, this is, you know, like a way to reduce your waste. This is a way to think about your environmental impact.
Yep, nice. There's a fresh question in about talking about giving experiences. And I think you mentioned that, Janice, such as concert tickets and things like that. I'd also like to mention, I wasn't sure if this was mentioned or not, sometimes giving to a favorite charity. I'm giving a, you know, $20 or $50 in your name to this charity, and it means a great deal to me. And here's why I'm doing it. It could be because of the service to that charity, but could also be because I'm trying to reduce waste and stuff. You don't need more stuff. That's another way I think people can kind of do it in a green way and still feel like they've given a gift.
Yeah, I've given my parents, you know, well, I've donated in their name to some of their favorite charities, and it's, you know, I'm like, well, you're, you know, I hate to throw my dad under the bus, but you're 80, Dad. Like, what am I going to give you that you don't already have? What do you need? Like, you don't need anything. So, yeah, I've given, and I think that's, and I love that too. I love it when somebody gives to a charity in my name. And there are some charities that do micro loans, and so the gift is just keeps giving. So there's different kinds of ways to give that money, and then if you give to I can't think of the name of the charity where they do the little micro loans, then you get an email every time they pay you back and say, now would you like to reinvest that money in somebody else's little micro loan? So there's lots of interesting ways to give.
I think is that Kiva.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Kiva. Yep. Barb just noted that. Debbie in the Q&A noted, I like to receive donations that allow the recipient to pick a project like Donors Choose for education and global giving. But those are a couple right there as well. But it's, yeah, I think your point, Janice, is a fair point. We all know people who would say, what am I going to get this person? What do you get the person that has everything? They don't have to be 80. They just... And I don't know. I think very often it's a little bit of a different gift, and they might appreciate that you gave it a little bit of thought and that you're serving a couple of different purposes at the same time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I am definitely seeing a shift though in the younger generation. A friend of mine has high school boys, and you asked them what they wanted. They were like, well, a secondhand shirt. Like they wanted a gift certificate to a secondhand shop. So like it's definitely a trend, and they were super into it. And I bought stuff at Savers, and I was really happy about it. I mean, the stuff is in great condition. Like if it's a game and it's got all the pieces, I don't apologize. I say I found a great game for you.
Yeah, well, it is about changing that stigma sometimes that's attached to that. It's changing on its own. I guess it's kind of a cool thing to do rather than you having to explain it. Someone noted gifting eco-friendly laundry and dishwasher detergents and include information about how to order more. That's a little more of sort of that spreading the word in a little bit of a subversive way. I've got some laundry detergent I'd like you to try. I think you'll really like it. And by the way, you'll be helping save the planet.
Sounds like a good idea to me.
Yeah, no, I think there would be some people who would be really receptive to that, you know, because I think that there's a lot of things when we think about our environmental impact, you know, like, you know, I remember when, as I was learning, it was like, oh, wait, I have to think about what kind of soaps I'm putting down the drain, or, you know, how that's impacting the environment. I think that's a great way to introduce people to things, you know, especially if you're offering to like buy it for them so they can try it out and see how great it is. I think that's always a good idea.
Yeah. I'm gonna mention one more time Joel's comment a little earlier about sort of the cultural realignment that we have to do when we talk about, you know, things like, you know, as you noted about giving secondhand or shopping secondhand and donating things like that, that sometimes there is a little bit explaining that that has to be done, when we do that, all for the right reasons. I want to make sure I conveyed Joel's note appropriately. But yeah, if you're giving a gift of service, or that sometimes you need to sort of explain a little bit why you're doing what you're doing the way you're doing it.
I agree.
Absolutely. Yeah, I thought that was great too, David, the point you made about like having a time limit on that, right? So it doesn't go by 6 years, but saying, hey, like next month, I would love to come and drop you off a meal, or this next Friday night, I would love to watch your son for you so you can, have some time to yourself. I think that's, I think that's the key, maybe writing it out in a card or somewhere where it's, so it doesn't just fall off doesn't fall off the radar.
Yeah, I definitely think putting a timeline makes sense, because then the onus is sort of on the giver to give the gift, as opposed to like passively giving it to someone and then waiting for them to ask you to give it. You know what I mean? Like, and then maybe they're like, I can't ask you. Right. So like you can just say, giving a timeline, like, and if you're going to make a meal, like, I will make your meal next Tuesday, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I find I bug them about it nonstop for a few months, and then they get the message, I'm sincere, I really want to help do this, but if a year goes by and they haven't taken me up on it, maybe it's time to, put an expiration date. Can I go back to decorating for a second and Christmas trees? And I wasn't sure if I got a hard and fast, is there a position on, have we determined empirically whether it's environmentally better to have a fake Christmas tree or a real Christmas tree, or is that still sort of in the wind a little bit?
I don't think the jury is still out. I think it's better to have a real tree. Yeah. But I'm going to keep my fake tree. And I think if you have a fake tree and you use it, I'm going to use my tree until I can't use my tree anymore. And, that's fine. People make the decisions that they make for various reasons. And, I'm going to use it for 20 years and it's going to balance out to me.
Absolutely. I think the most sustainable thing you can do is sometimes, the temptation is to be like, I need to go get all these like zero waste or like sustainable items, when really sometimes when we're kind of becoming aware of more of what we're using, is just to keep using what we already have, rather than, like throw out your artificial tree you maybe bought 2 years ago. It would be better to keep getting, if you feel comfortable with continuing to use it, like just to keep using that until it can't be used anymore. I agree. So I wasn't familiar though with the potted tree idea, and I think that's a great idea. I think there might be I saw a really good article in the Nature Conservancy. So that might be a good link to drop in the chat as well if it hasn't already been. But I think that article explained really well about why real trees are beneficial to the environment, actually don't harm the environment. Because I think there's that concern with like, well, aren't we cutting down trees, right? So, but I think the science behind it shows that no, this is kind of a natural process of the world, and there's a science behind to all of that.
Yeah, and there's they are a crop, so they are planted to be cut down, like just like corn or soy or whatever. So they're a crop, and as long as they don't use a bunch of pesticides, it's good.
I think I just saw a story in the last week or so that it is, and I don't have any empirical data on this or even the sourcing for it, but that it's better for your mental health to put your decorations up early and to have a real tree. Now, it might have been put out by the Christmas Tree Growers, Foundation, very likely was. But it leads me to, and I have more questions that I'm going to pose in just a second from the chat and from the Q&A, but it does lead me to, I think, what you were just saying, Janice, which is, or perhaps Lauren, I'm trying to do the right thing. I can't do all of it. And so help me feel good about, and remember to bring my grocery bags to the store when I go. And you know what I mean? Is there a sense with, like, you two are so much further along in this journey than I am. I'm trying, but you don't have to do it all at once, do you? You can sort of take baby steps, or, maybe bigger than baby steps.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first R in the hierarchy is reduce, and then reuse, and then recycle. So being cognizant and mindful of what you purchase. So, don't overbuy. That's like the number one thing you can do. reuse what you have, as Lauren mentioned. You know, don't go out and just like rebuy everything. If you shop at home first, and then dispose of those things properly when the time comes. And that could be by donating it or by recycling it in the right place. You can't do everything at once. We don't expect that. There's no purity test. You do what you can do.
Yep. Great.
Yes.
Well said.
Yeah.
A number of people have noted decorating ficus trees and trees in their houses. Apparently that's a thing. So I gotta get on that. Several people, including Catherine and Janet, and I've got a Norfolk pine in the house. It's like a big house plant that they decorate. So there's a number of people who do that, and then nothing has to be cut down, and you're using a real tree. Bamboo toothbrushes comes from Catherine LeBlanc. I've not heard of those, but
oh yeah, those are wonderful. So
what about, I think you mentioned this a little bit earlier, Janice, about buying locally versus shopping online. Somebody noted that they buy a lot online, and it's just so easy to pick up the phone and one click and it's on its way. Tomorrow, even better, So talk about the impact that has on the Amazon trucks, or buying online rather than buying locally.
I'm going to let Lauren get to that, but I will say that if you do buy online, cardboard is living its best life right now. It's got a really great, it's worth a lot of money. And so if you do buy online, please put your cardboard box in the recycling. Mm-hmm. It will be recycled into a new box. They can be recycled up to 6 or 7 times. So go ahead, Lauren.
No, that's great, Janice. I think that you're right. I that's really important to recycle boxes, or to try and keep them around to reuse again. Like I've tried to use mine to mail other things out I've needed to. Yes, I will say, there are companies like Amazon that, because of how much travel they do, how many trucks they have out, because of how many packages they have coming through, that does impact the environment, that does produce a lot of emissions and a lot of waste. So I think Amazon has started to have more options, which I'm sure you've seen. I don't shop on Amazon too often. I'm more of a Target person. I just really enjoy going to Target. That's kind of like a way I do self-care. But but I think on Amazon, they do have an option now where you can request fewer boxes. Mm-hmm. So I think that's an option as well. And I also did send a gift to someone a few days ago through Amazon, and they asked if I wanted gift bags, the reusable gift bags. And I was like, this is a few dollars extra. And I was like, does my friend really need that? Is her 2-year-old daughter really going to notice if this Daniel Tiger book is inside a gift bag or it's in the cardboard? She's just going to care about the book and be excited about that. So I just think about, there are a lot of options, not just Amazon, but other companies where they are starting to try and be more aware of reducing their waste, because people have said things. Mm-hmm. So I think just looking for those eco-friendly options on there is a great idea. But I think, like I said, small businesses tend to be more expensive to shop in. So, if that is accessible to you, I always think that that's great, not just for the environment, because, it's just a lower carbon footprint, lower impact, less packaging, but you're also investing into your community. You're investing into people who, that's their livelihood, and it impacts them and makes a difference. Totally. So I always try to do that if I can, but that's not always accessible to everyone. So I think it's, again, going back to this, you do what you can, and it's enough.
Yep. A couple of people noted playlists, a Spotify playlist that's kind of a nice thing. It doesn't require any packaging at all. And a really nice thing that someone gets an hour of music or an hour and a half of music that you especially picked out for them. That's a really, really nice idea.
Oh, that is a great idea. Yeah, I think that I think that Barb did mention that as an idea. And I think that that's really special, as a way to give people something,
Yeah, a friend of mine crowdsourced a Spotify playlist for his wife, who was having some health issues, and he knew she liked the 90s music. So he sent an email out to all her friends and was like, what's your favorite song from the 90s? Mm-hmm. And so we all sent a bunch of suggestions, and then she had stuff to listen to when she was in her treatment. So you can be very creative with your means of getting these things.
Yeah. I'm going to
That's
mention.
a really great idea.
Yeah,
Love that.
I'm going to mention, well, someone noted e-cards, which is sort of the same thing. You're sending something electronically that it doesn't require any packaging or stamp or paper. E-cards instead of paper cards, and noted wrapping paper is, that is reusable. Some of it is reusable. It's funny, when I was growing up, my mom would always, don't tear the paper, when you're tearing the holidays, she wanted to fold it up and put it back in the, so she was, I guess, way ahead of her time, as it turns out.
I think the saving wrapping paper skipped a generation.
Yeah.
Now we're back to it.
Someone noted, I want to make sure I give credit, it's Susie who noted the holiday lights. I think you mentioned upgrading them to LEDs if you can, but boy, you drive through certain neighborhoods and it's like Christmas, that movie Christmas Vacation, where there's a brownout in the area because of all the lights that are on. What do you say to that? I mean, I guess LED, if possible, that's a really good start.
Absolutely, LED. If you're gonna go big, you should go LED. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've got Christmas lights. I am fond of them, but I'm also weary of light pollution, and I worry that people overdo it sometimes. So I mean, just less is more sometimes.
There's a nice note here from Debbie who asks, any suggestions on not getting caught up in the buying frenzy? I start out with a fixed list of who to buy for, who and what to buy, and then keep adding to it as it gets closer to Christmas. I think we're all guilty of that from time to time.
Absolutely.
It's probably motivated, and it's good intentions, I suppose, but how to not get caught up in the frenzy?
I don't know. How do you not, Lauren?
Well, I do have a lot of people in my life who actually are, we're really clear. We're like, we don't need gifts, so, and I think just respecting that. And I also communicate that with people, especially if they have given me a gift, for my birthday, or they gave something for my son's birthday. I just tell them like, hey, that's fine. Like, you have been generous in so many ways, there's no reason to do that again. And then that kind of expectation is dropped both ways. I also try to buy things over time. So for example, and that kind of helps financially as well. Like I went on a trip to Vermont in August and bought, a bunch of things that you can only really find in Vermont, like the little maple leaf syrups and things like that. And I was like, I know tons of people who will love that. So, and they're good for a really long time, as long as they're, like sealed still and everything. So I have a few of those I'm going to take down to Florida with me for Christmas. And I think that, those are little fun gifts, but I think that kind of helps me plan over time,
Yeah, we do a Secret Santa. So, because there's a lot of people on my husband's side, and it just became unmanageable. So we just get one person from the family, and we have a budget, and we'll buy for just that one person every year. But my problem is my 6-year-old, because I forget what I've purchased for her, in October, and I will end up buying more than I want to. So this year I cut myself off completely, but then I went to Savers and I was like, oh my God, they have so much awesome stuff. So I felt okay about it because it was secondhand, but I did buy a couple of games that I probably would not have bought otherwise.
Yeah. A note from Karen says, once I get through my list, I also make mini holiday breads and give those to all of my extra people. But that's nice. I mean, what's nicer than baked good cookies or baked goods that someone made with their own 2 hands to give? And again, you're not using up a lot of packaging or delivery or transport or anything like that to do something like that.
Yeah, that's true. I've done that many times. I've done that for other holidays too, because I feel the same. Like, every Father's Day, I'm like, what do I give, my elders who have everything they need. I'm like, and they're trying to give things away. They don't want more things for their homes at this point in their lives, So I did that several years in a row, and everyone was so thankful. They were just like, oh, this is great. I have homemade zucchini bread. Like, who does that? So I think a lot of people in our lives will appreciate these things more than we realize.
Mm-hmm. I think Allison just dropped a note in the chat, and I'm just going to read it. One way I've dealt with gift volume is to really focus on children. I had a friend stressing so much over family gift expectations, and I told her maybe it would help if they only did gifts for the kids. I got her child something really nice off his list that I knew he wanted. I hope she then understood that I didn't get her something she might not need or want since she's an adult. So she bought something for the kid rather than for the kid and the adult. Now I feel like Scrooge, but it does seem to me that it makes sense. I think we put the pressure on ourselves that we have to buy gifts for absolutely everybody. Maybe that pressure is coming from within rather than externally.
Right.
Allison, I just want to say I feel you. I also am a Scrooge, but I am okay with it. And I hope that you will be too. We don't need to give, as you know, we give in different ways.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Somebody said something about giving money, and I honestly think that's a fabulous idea. Like, who doesn't want just cash, cold hard cash? Even my 5-year-old, well, when she was 5, was like, I just want money. So she could buy whatever she wanted.
That's
more support
true.
for the kids only idea.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful idea. Like I mean, we have a savings account our son cannot touch until he's 18, that's specifically for education. And we always tell people that's the best gift you could give him, is to help him, hopefully one day not graduate with student loans, and change that cycle in our family, that he won't have to have that kind of debt as an adult. And so I always tell people like that. I think that's wonderful too. And I see that trend actually with weddings. I don't know if anyone else has, but a lot of times the couples who's getting married will always just is kind of just indirectly saying the best thing you could give us is money for our honeymoon, or so they've just spent all this money on an event. So I think that we don't realize like that. I don't think that that's a cheap or unthoughtful gift at all. Like I think that's a really helpful gift to so many people.
Right. Well, it's also an opportunity to teach the child, if whether it's money or look, we're only going to get you one gift, that is, and we're not going to get you the 12 things that you put on your list. And here's why. It's because you don't need 12 things, or we're trying to care for the environment, we're trying to care for the planet. It's an opportunity to sort of teach them why you're doing what you're doing, which I think is a good thing too.
Absolutely. And I think especially with kids like my daughter, she wanted me to buy something, and I didn't think it was worth the money. And I told her, I don't think it's not worth it to me. You want to save up the money, you do it. And then when she got to that point where she could buy it, she's like, yeah, I could buy so much more. So it's really a good lesson about, money is it's not paper, it has value,
Yes.
So.
Jeff noted on the subject that we're talking about, the giving and so forth. Christmas used to be a festival that lasted 12 days. It involved games, music, parties, celebrations, rather than giving stuff. Historians have noted that American Christmas emerged with the Industrial Revolution. Maybe we should be throwing more parties after COVID, that is, Jeff notes. I'm wondering, I don't know, has there been a bump in recycling or less recycling in the last year and a half, 2 years during COVID? Have we tracked that at all? My sense is people are, at home much more, and there's more of a sensitivity and awareness to how much stuff they're consuming or going through. But have you seen any evidence that we're more aware of greening the planet?
I think both trash and recycling at home have both gone up just because of people working from home. It used to be maybe like commercial side would, businesses would throw stuff away or recycle. So yeah, I think we've seen that both of those numbers grow since 2020.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it seems like I remember reading several articles about this last year. And then in some of my work, I've spoken with recycling coordinators in cities and towns. And it seems like what they saw was a lot of spring cleaning once especially in those first few months of the lockdown, when people, were a lot more isolated and at home more often. People just started spring cleaning, and, it was, nonprofits like Goodwill just be inundated with things. So I think, going back to like, I wonder how many of us got rid of well-intentioned gifts we received years ago. And we were finally like, we got to part with this thing. So, it's interesting to see how that, has impact, that's still impacting us, years later.
I think I've seen a lot of the proliferation of the Buy Nothing group and those, neighborhood giving gift economy stuff in the last year. And that is a really, really convenient way of paring down on stuff instead of relying on these organizations to take our donations, because when they're full, and they have to, you know, either pay for more storage or they have to pay to take that to disposal. So it's not helpful if we inundate them. There's other outlets to get rid of it first. It's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
A little bit of back and forth about back to food, about whether buffets or plating food and putting it in front of people creates less food waste. I guess there's a case you could make that people, when they serve a buffet, they go up and they just pile their plate up and they don't eat everything. You know, that there's a potential for more waste there. Do you have either or both of you have a position on whether it's best to serve buffet style or plate a meal and put it in front of people when you're celebrating?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that personally, I like to serve myself, especially because you don't know, you may not be able to eat everything that's being served or care for everything. So I think that makes a lot of sense, you know, because if someone has a gluten intolerance and then you have put a bunch of rolls on their dinner plate, you know, what if they're, you know, now they've touched it, you know, now there's, especially with COVID, I know people are still trying to be, you know, a lot more cautious about things. So I think about that. I think that is, that has a good place, you know, thinking about just allowing people to serve themselves first.
Yeah, I mean, and colleges are doing that. They took away the trays so that kids can't just like keep putting more and more stuff on their trays. You know, you just get the one plate. I think buffet is probably fine. I mean, there's not a lot of people who waste a lot of food in my circle except for the children.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. So, and one trick I have found, I actually got this idea from another group that's based out of Boston called Food Waste Feast. If anyone's, I don't know if anyone's familiar with them, but they used to run a business called May's Dumplings, but they focus a lot on like their cooks and who focus a lot on like reducing food waste. And one of them has children, so she talked a lot about how to like do those type, like reduce that kind of waste. So, you know, just like freezing things, because, you know, how many times if you have a child or grandchild, like I know my son grabs a banana, he wants to open it just for the sake of peeling it open, takes one bite and leaves it on the table. So what I've started doing was just freezing them. That was one of the tips Food Waste Feast gave me, was I just freeze all this like uneaten fruit and we just make smoothies later. You know, or you could make homemade bread or other things. So that might be an idea for the holidays. You know, if you find things, you know, your child's not eating or they take a few bites and then you're like, well, I guess we'll just freeze it or, you know, reuse it later. So that's an idea.
Back to the questions are slowing down a little bit, but I want to make sure I attend to as many of these as I can. Back to gifts for just a second. And some of this we've covered, but low waste gift ideas, theater tickets, again, with the experiences, movie tickets, concert tickets, coupon for a restaurant or a garden store. This is from Joel. And especially if you circle that back to a local business, a local garden store, a local, you know, business that may be struggling during COVID, you're really doing two things at once. And Joel also noted at audubon.com, you can gift online classes. There are probably other sites as well, but that's another, again, a terrific experience that you're giving and sort of pointing people in a direction that, you know, you hope they'll take to a little bit if they're interested in greening the planet a little bit. Brian notes, consider a gas generator gift for New England blackouts. There's a ton of information that he's put in the chat room, including, it looks like a link. But yeah, weather can be unpredictable here in the Northeast, and there are blackouts and power goes down and whatnot. But there's a ton of information on that in the chat. Let's see if I missed any more. I wonder how environmentally friendly a Kindle is compared to paper books. There's a CNET article. Chauncey, who I know from First Parish, dropped a link in the chat if you're inclined to see a CNET article about that. Do you have a position on? I'll tell you why I read on the iPad occasionally, but I'm way too tempted to go to Facebook or check Twitter or email or something like that while I'm reading, which is not what I should be doing when I'm reading. So I have a stack of books on my nightstand and my iPad, but which is more environmentally sound?
I have no position on that.
I've heard the argument that I think the electronic would be more environmentally sound because you're not having to, you know, all the paper and everything. But,
Sure.
you know, I think like you were saying, you know, David, just like these mental health benefits to things, like, you know, there's argument that there's a mental health benefit to like putting up your tree earlier and having a real tree. I would argue maybe there's a mental health benefit to reading a real paperback book still.
Right.
And I think there's so many ways to get them used. Like I love the little free libraries. I've gotten so many books out of those. I have the last book I'm reading, I just found out of a little free library, or you can actually go to public libraries and check out books from there. I feel like that's such an underutilized resource. Like most people I know don't go to libraries, and every time I go, I'm like, why don't we all should be at libraries all the time. These places are amazing.
Yeah.
You know, so, and you save so much money, you know, that way. You know, we're all technically paying for that already, you know, so I think, you know, I think there's different balances, you know, too.
Yeah, if there's no sense of urgency, there's no reason why you probably couldn't find a book used. And
Yeah.
if you're like you reading it for a book club or something, you know, I've seen a lot of people put on Buy Nothing, in search of this book, I need it by whatever, so I can read it for my book club, and they won't find it. People will offer it up. So it's really not hard to find a used book.
It's true. You know, even Amazon, you know, in that respect, there's tons of used books on Amazon. I mean, I wonder, I mean, I can't even remember how many textbooks I thankfully found much cheaper on Amazon. So I think, you know, like everything has its place in a sense.
I use thriftbooks.com. I refuse to buy new books, but it's a good one.
Oh, I've never used that. That's a great,
Tell me,
do you need a membership for that?
No, it's just thriftbooks.com.
Books.com.
And they will send you a used copy. Often they come from libraries, but yeah, they're in very good condition.
Yep, that's terrific. Yeah, again, it's getting used to the idea that I don't need to buy my copy of this book that's singularly mine, you know, that I get squeaky clean from Amazon. It's the same book, it's the same pages if I get it from the library or get it from thriftbooks.com or get it donated. Like that. It's changing the way we think about this stuff, I think. I'm going to note one more link that Janet just dropped in the chat. It's onetreeplanted.org. Charity doing reforestation work in areas devastated by fires. You can donate to them as a gift. And that's a wonderful thing. For those who haven't done that, it sounds like a fair number of people have. We did the Heifer Project for a couple of years in a row where you'd give somebody a cow or a sheep. It was the greatest gift ever. And it's a really different gift to give, but it is so well received when you give it. So onetreeplanted.org sounds like one of those.
That's a
Teaching
great
a child to knit or other life skills. That's great. Catherine.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, I would love if someone offered those type of life skills. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, look at my daughter just made. I don't know if you can see this.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful.
She learned to embroider at school.
Wow.
Lovely.
And she made this for his birthday present. We're going to make it into an ornament. So
very nice.
Lots of fun things kids can do.
Wreaths made of things you have in your yard. That could be fun. I love the idea of changing it up just a little bit, you know. A wreath made of something that you have in the yard is still a wreath, you know, even though it's a little bit, might look a little different. I think I'm watching the clock here. It's 8 o'clock. I don't see any new questions coming in, but I'll take a moment to thank you both for the work that you do and for spending time with us tonight. And this entire presentation is going to be up and online and available at on the website at I just want to make sure I get the site correct, at metrowestclimatesolutions.org. So all of the links that were mentioned, you'll be able to hear them again, you know, if you watch the link on replay. And thank you both for all that you do, for the work that you do, but for joining us tonight. Really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. This was really fun to chat through more about greening the holidays.
I got a lot more ideas now.
Well, I love what you said about you don't have to do it all at once, you know, one thing at a time or a couple things at a time is certainly worth doing. I'm going to note that next month, Metro West Climate Solutions will have another presentation. It'll be on January 27th, where we're going to be recapping COP26, which you may know is the Glasgow Climate Conference. Phil Giudice will be our speaker. He served as special assistant to the president for climate policy during the startup of the Biden-Harris administration. He's a member at First Parish in Wayland. He's a great guy, incredibly knowledgeable about this stuff, and I'm very, very much looking forward to hearing him present next month. And again, that'll be January 27th. You can get details in the link and sign up for it and all at MetroWestClimateSolutions.org. Anything else to add before we wrap up, Janice and Lauren?
Can I put a plug in for my website?
Please do.
RecycleSmartMA.org. If you're looking for ways to figure out what goes in the trash or the recycling, RecycleSmartMA.org.
Can I give you a pop quiz on pizza boxes real quick?
Sure.
Pizza boxes, if they're pretty clean, no grease, they can go in the recycling?
Even with grease, they can go in the recycling. Just get all the food bits out. Okay. Get all the extra paper, all the other stuff. If it's got grease on it, it's fine. Put it in the recycling.
How about like olive oil, plastic bottles and things? A little olive oil on the inside, that's okay?
Yeah, totally.
Awesome. They're great. I feel better. Lauren, anything to add?
No, thank you both so much for, thank you all so much for having us. I just want to, acknowledge like whatever you're doing is enough, like all these little, initiatives that we're doing, they add up and they matter and they count.
They really do. Yeah. And if it's not something you think about from time to time, that's okay. You're thinking about it now. You're here, you're watching, and you're thinking about it now. That's good. You can get a monthly newsletter. That'll be a nice little ping, a nice little reminder. It'll come electronically. You can sign up for the monthly newsletter at MetroWestClimateSolutions.org. If you're new to this organization and to this type of work, go to MetroWestClimateSolutions.org and find out just a little bit more. They'd love to be in touch. Great. Thank you both very, very much. Have a wonderful, wonderful holiday season. And to everybody watching, thank you for joining us tonight. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
You're welcome. Happy holidays.
Thanks, Janice.